Well, firstly, thank you to Joanne for the invitation this afternoon. It's a privilege to be able to be here and speak a little bit about my story. It's been a journey for me, I suppose, and this period, what I call maybe disclosure or sharing my journey, has really only happened this past year, even though this is probably going on from 2021. So Joanne was one of the first people outside my family that I entrusted this with, so it's coming full circle, I guess, being able to share this with everybody today. So just a wee bit about me for those who don't know me. I see a few old school friends here, and a few past teachers as well, which is really interesting. So don't find out any spelling mistakes with my parents if you see them. Husband is Celine, who's been my rock behind all this. I'm delighted she's here today with me as well. A dad of three, Ollie, Lucy and Jack. I was working as a teacher, the word was, for 17 years. And I really enjoyed competing in sports, and it was a big part of who I was, even though I was never sporty in school. After school, I suppose married into the mom house, you didn't really have a choice. So yeah, that was a big part. And now myself and my wife run Giggles just outside Newry, and so that's a big part of who I am. Then, before, as I said, I was a teacher for about 17 years, and I did notice things start to happen towards, I suppose, the end of that phase of my career, if you like. In school, there were subtle changes in my brain. I was forgetting names of colleagues, started to develop a bit of anxiety, which was sort of unusual. And we had conversations, and I just said, I've enough. So I decided I was going to resign. And after being in school for about 17 years, it was a big change, and the biggest change was probably making the actual decision. And it's not something that I've ever regretted, important to note. And then I did do some work with the Education Authority as a schools advisor. I was in that post for about 9 months. And I went on a cycling holiday, really enjoyed cycling. And I went with 3 friends to Mallorca. And it was actually in September. I was going, God, this is freedom. I can go in September for the first time, not get into schools, which we know what it's like in September time. And I wasn't feeling great. And we went up for a cycle for a few hours. And I went to call my friend's name and nothing would come out. Couldn't talk. I thought it was just a bit of fatigue. Went to a restaurant, we sat and we had a wee bit of lunch, and just all of a sudden I lost the feeling in my arms. Completely out of nowhere. I didn't even say anything to the 2 boys that I was sitting with. I said, right, this is a wee bit unusual, and I get up and went home. The sort of symptoms sort of persisted a wee bit. I knew there was something wrong, and the irony was, for about 17 years in St. Louis, I raised money for Action MS. We'd done a sponsored walk. Every year, we took them to Kilbrony, and we bussed them, we went up to our presentation. And there was this lady, Anne Walker, I can still remember coming into school every year, she would talk about the symptoms of MS, and it resonated with me, and I knew in my mind, right, this is a bit too familiar, if you like. So, that's basically what it turned out to be, was multiple sclerosis. Now, it was a massive shock, I suppose. Really what MS is really your brain mistakes your immune system and it tries to fight against it. And it damages what's really the myelin. And the myelin is the protective bit. It's like the lining around the plug. And it just eats away at it. So the nerve signals don't get to the ends of the various parts of your body. Common symptoms was like fatigue, vision problems, muscle weakness, etc. So my diagnosis took about 6 months or so. I was told, basically, eat what you want, don't worry about it, don't read about it. And naturally, that's not what you're going to do. You're going to go home and start reading about it. And there wasn't really much more you could do at that stage, but just to wait. And then it was just around the time of COVID, and I got the COVID vaccine, and then things just went downhill really, really quick after that. And that was probably the biggest challenge, if you like. Again, don't mind sharing with you, I remember sitting in Derrymore Woods, left Giggles one day, and I sat up in the park and cried, because things had just got that bad in terms of cognition. And for somebody who's used to being articulate and standing up in front of people, when you couldn't get the thoughts together in your mind, it was a massive amount of fear. So, intrinsically, I'm probably quite motivated. Celine probably know, probably a wee bit keen on a bit different things, and I quickly had to think about, right, what's my why here? And I had to sort of reframe everything very quickly in my mind, and the most important thing to me is my wife and my 3 children, and that was really important, because they watch everything. Your 3 children watch what you do, how you react, and they've really only learned about my diagnosis this year, but probably what I've been doing in the past number of years has prepared them for that. So yeah, it was really important to me that I turned this into something which I was able to control in a certain way. And this guy, I'm sure many of you heard about Joe Dispenza. I don't know if you've heard of his work. Really important book I read quite early on. It was about the power of your thoughts. And basically, if you read all the books about multiple sclerosis and you read about the prognosis, and many people talk about being in a wheelchair or losing mobility, but if you keep thinking about these things in your mind, then your body naturally starts preparing for it. And Joe was big into the power of your mind in terms of the power of your healing. So if you are listening to these negative thoughts and these negative loops, then your body automatically will start preparing for it. So you have to do the opposite. So you don't let that fear sort of get into your mind, if you like. So in my head, if I thought any negative thoughts, that was feeding the MS. So that started to get control of things, if you like. So that was a really important milestone for me in terms of the power of my mind and the power of our thoughts, etc. So I started researching, and I said, let me find one person in the world that's living well with this, and if they can do it, I can do it as well. So I reached out to people all over the world, and Steve would know I've been in Zooms, but I don't know how many people, learning from what they've been doing and how they've been managing it. And from that early on, I knew there was going to be a mechanism through it. And there's this guy called Professor George Janelick. He's an Australian professor just outside Sydney. And his mum had MS. And his mum died with MS. She actually took her own life at the end because of how she'd suffered. And then George realised that he had MS as well. But he used his whole knowledge in terms of research in the medical field, and he came up with what's called the Over-MS protocol. And it's basically a lifestyle approach to managing MS. And he developed these different pillars, which you like, and he had all the evidence, all the data to reinforce what we needed to do in order to protect ourselves, if you like. A lot of it resonated with me because it was research-based. So it's called the OMS protocol, basically. So basically what it is, in a nutshell, is food is the biggest part of it. So what we put into our body fuels our body, makes our cells. And for people with multiple sclerosis, the biggest enemy is dairy. Okay, so straight away we had to cut out dairy from our diet, because that really encourages your body to attack itself. And anything with saturated fat, so no more meat, and no more steaks. Celine still has her steak, and we're going to have her, and I have my fish. But that's the first pillar, if you like, is the food. So and it stands to say, what we put into our body makes our body. So really protected with that. I am blessed that another pillar of it is exercise, and I really enjoy my exercise. So that's really important. We talk about disease-modifying drugs. They said if you could tap exercise or put it into a drug, it'd be the most successful drug in the world. So what we do in terms of our body, in terms of what it does to our brain, is really, really important. It encourages what we call neuroplasticity. So it encourages to make new brain cells and to fix or to rewire the damage that has already been done, if you like. So that gave me a sense of agency. So I jumped into that cold turkey. So it's probably been over 4 years since I've had a bit of chocolate, if you like, but what needed to be happening. So this is me last year. Come back, if you like, to make peace in Mallorca, because Mallorca was the first place that I got my symptoms in when I was cycling my bodies. So 4 years later, I went back and I completed the 312. And the 312 is 312 kilometres around the island in a day on the bike. So, yeah, I'm not telling a lie. I dropped a wee tear when I came over the line, but it helped me make peace with it, if you like, on my journey, which is really important. And that was probably one of the days where I thought, right, I sort of have this. So this is really important, and we speak about blessings through hard times, and this is one of the biggest blessings for me, is the people I have met on my journey, and the people that I've got to cross paths with that has had real challenges in their life. And I thought it was really important. I know PowerPoint can be boring at times, but it allows us to put faces to names, if you like. This guy down the very bottom corner with the hat on back to front is called David, and David's only one leg really works well, simplified way of putting it, but he's got the world record for doing a marathon in crutches this year in London. And he came and done Hyrox in Dublin with me last year, and he says, Francis, you have a duty to share your story. I was probably really reluctant. There's a very small number of people who knew it. And he reframed it in my mind. He says, you have a duty to share this for people coming behind you. So that's part of the reason why I guess I'm up here sharing this today. At the top, with the guy with the sunglasses, is called Ricky. And Ricky and me met in Chicago at the World Hyrox Championships a couple of months ago. And it was really interesting that we had a real sort of a shared history together. So Ricky is an amputee. He was competing in one of the categories, but he's lost his leg. And I had asked him how he got injured, and he was telling me he got injured in Afghanistan. He was part of the British military. And I said, have you ever served in South Armagh? He says he had. Yes. Yeah, he spent a long time in Bestbrook and in Falkland. I didn't know we were neighbours. I said, yes, we were. So his job was that when the helicopters would come to the lookout post, he was the guy who was sort of directing it down into it. And he was 17. He was a child at the time. Yeah. And there was us, probably at one time, adversarials, now competing on the same floor, and we're great friends and we're still in contact. So Ricky, again, was a blessing. And this guy, Vinny, down here, I went over to Istanbul to support him a couple of weeks ago with Celine's dad. Again, follows the same protocol that I do. It's called the OMS. And he competed in the World Championships in triathlon. So that journey has enabled me to cross paths with some amazing people that has inspired me and has paid incredible kindness forward to me. And my job is now to pay that forward to other people and to let other people know coming behind me that we can still do difficult things and we can still do hard things. And so I suppose just a wee bit about growth mindset and why it was important to me. But multiple sclerosis is always seen as you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. You don't know when your next relapse is, and people talk about that. And I've sort of removed myself from all that sort of chat, if you like, because no one in our lives knows what's certain. No one knows what tomorrow brings. So you control what happens today, if you like. The challenges that I had, they say you control stress and meditation. I'm not that good at that, I'll be honest. I find it hard to switch the mind off a little bit. Sort of an easy on myself. And in the past, I probably said I was a wee bit of a perfectionist. Celine probably would disagree with that again if she's in the house. But anyway, trying not to be like that anymore, so career driven and finding a wee bit of balance. I will speak a wee bit about medication, and there's a different narrative about medication in MS. Some people choose not to take it, others choose to it. And so I get what's called an infusion twice a year, and I see that as my insurance policy. So what I do every day matters more. My exercise, my eating, etc., my approach to life, and that's sort of like my backup. If you like. This is just a wee bit. I got the opportunity to represent Ireland in Chicago a couple of months past and compete in the World Championships in what's called neurological minor. So basically anybody with a neurological condition is in that category. And it's a really, really tough bar. You have to be top 3 in the world to qualify of over 100 races. And it was a fantastic opportunity. And again, that's where I got to cross paths with Ricky. So even though it was really, really hard at the start, I got to meet some amazing people and to sort of try to cross paths. And then I sort of reflected what I would like to tell myself on that day that I got that diagnosis, which was hard. Just the simple things, that everything will be okay. And still getting to create some amazing memories with Celine and the children. And our family will benefit from this, and they have, in terms of the balance that we've had in our lives, that I'll find better balance in my life, that we can still do good, do hard things, and that we're going to be meeting some amazing people and creating that sense of, I suppose, community. And one day that I'll be able to pay that kindness forward that people have given to me. And that this, sometimes I say, we're more than 2 letters. Everybody gets fixated on this MS, basically, but we're more than that 2 letters. So that's a wee bit of my story. Thank you.
I feel like we need a spotlight.
Go easy on me now.
Not at all. I think that was oh my goodness. What a story you have to share. And there's just questions that I want to ask you emanating from that presentation and looking ahead of it today. First of all, has anybody else in this room done Hyrox? Oh, look at that now. We had sign baths, we had tomatoes, we had no Hyrox. Is that because you couldn't get tickets? Because when you go online to get the Hyrox tickets, you can't get them. There's my WhatsApp groups blow up. Not that I'm trying, but they blow up the days of Hyrox. But it's a massive craze at the minute, right? Yeah. And so, just to put this all in context, you are a world champion, like a world champion. It's amazing.
Thank you.
Do you think that determination to do something like that, to challenge yourself in that way, would that have been there but for the diagnosis, but for MS. Do you know, have you ever thought about that?
Yeah, well, probably would say, it's strange looking up me here, I'm probably a quite driven person. So yes, I've been motivated, and I like to always have something to target and to work towards. So in the past it was Ironman races, it was some form of goal. But the sport has been a great mechanism for me to sort of deal with the diagnosis. It's been a mechanism to share with people my journey and to meet other people and to share with my kids, because that was the first time that they got to know that I was competing in an adaptive division, and I was trying to explain them what that meant. So the sport has helped me do that, if you like.
Yeah, and now that you're world champion, you said that you have to have targets and goals.
Yeah.
Like, where do you go now? Like
defending it. So I have a race in Rome in 2 weeks, so that's the plan. Yeah. More than a one-track pony. Yeah,
oh no, but it's amazing, and I think also the message there that you said you wouldn't have been that really that sporty at school either. That's a really important message, I think, for everybody, regardless of their circumstances, as well, that you can do it.
Last pick for all the public games at school. It's came full circle.
Here.
Yeah.
And then, you also mentioned there towards the end of your presentation about that idea of uncertainty. Tomorrow's not promised to any of us. Even though you tell yourself that, you could ask, do we actually fully believe that? And I think as we all continue in life, we've heard so many stories today of adversity, things that have happened to people, and then it's about how you not get over it, but how you maybe pivot and take that with you through life. And that idea of dealing with something that just lands on you unknown, like that your Mallorca experience, and then being told this is you for the rest of your life. Like processing that, dealing with that, trying to process that. If anybody's comes up against anything themselves, how do you even start? Because it's incredibly overwhelming.
I just think you have to be compassionate with yourself. First and foremost, and it takes time. I think time is a healing process for anybody, and then there is an art that we all probably work on, is living in the day and living in the present moment and not thinking about tomorrow or the next day. And then sometimes for me, it's reminding yourself that things are temporary, things will pass. If I get a symptom at the very start, I probably would have been hyper alert to any new sensation in your body, and you're just thinking, is this a relapse, is this more damage? But now if I feel something, I just try and lean into it, and more than likely then it will go away. Whereas if you fight it, you're hyper aware of it. So it's just being compassionate with yourself, and just that realization that things are temporary and things will move and will pass, and just trying to be more present.
You come across as the type of man who is becoming more comfortable with his emotions as well. And even there, parts of your presentation where you admitted to crying, shedding a tear. That's a really important message for other people to hear as well.
No, completely. Yes, because I think when you bottle up your emotions, they come out in other ways. And I'm sure many people here are familiar with Gabriel Marder's work. Is when the body says no. Sometimes the body will say no. When you're fighting things, it will manifest itself in other ways. So it's just leaning into and acknowledging that, and acknowledging that we all have hard days. That's part of life. But it's entrusting people in a safe space like this to share things like that.
And something else I took away from what you were saying there was the power of reaching out. You were dealing with a situation, and you could have just gone on what other people had said, their experiences, but you were determined that you were going to find an answer and find your way and find your path. And sometimes we're reluctant to contact people who have done things in an alternative way. But you found so much power in that.
Yes, I just needed to find one person. Just give me one person that I knew that was living really well with the condition, and I knew I would learn from them. I suppose what I need to do now is pay that forward to the next people come behind me, and part of that message is the sport, that we can still do hard things. Because you've got a label of some way doesn't mean we still can't dream big and aim big.
The label thing is really interesting, isn't it? We're hearing more and more of people maybe recognising that they have been neurodiverse all along. Was it before 1996 nobody would have been diagnosed as being anything? Then in their 40s you're thinking, things aren't making sense. Do I need to work this out? Do I need to find out? Has the label? How do you deal with the label? Because a lot of people aren't comfortable with that. I suppose initially the label gave me a bit of peace that I knew what it was. Because at the start you're thinking, are you overthinking, and you're feeling these different sensations and these different emotions. So there's fear that it could be a lot worse than what it is. But now I don't need the label. I am who I am.
that's why I sort of say we're more than the two letters, if you like. You're the person, you're still the person behind the label, if you like. So at the start, it probably give you that sense of what was causing the symptoms, if you like. But I think it's important for people just to remember that you're still the person you are.
And how grateful are you on a daily basis to, I forget his name, the man in the bottom right who encouraged you to tell your story, and said you have to tell your story?
No, we were driving up from Dublin, and it was a strange. He came up, and again, David is from a military background. He actually space military, and he said, "Yes," he says, "Francis, you have a duty to share this," and that flipped the whole thing in my mind, because prior to that was a very, very small number of people, because I didn't want to define the person I was, but he said, no, that's a duty. And from that then I have been more, that's why I put myself forward for the adaptive division, to try and share that message of positivity and hope.
And was it even cathartic putting together that PowerPoint presentation? Because in a way you're forced to really review what has happened in the last number of years, and like, it's not a long, you're not talking an awful long time here, Francis. An awful lot has happened to you in a very, very short space of time.
Yes, I said to Celine this morning, I was a wee bit triggered at the start when I was reflecting on the symptoms at the very start, but then it also reinforced how far I've come. By and large, I'm nearly symptom free at the minute, and that's a testament to Celine's always behind me too, in terms of the work we do. I say you're fighting it in the kitchen and the gym. Is the two places that I said we're sort of coming at this, and what you put into your body and what you do with your body. I think that's what's made the difference.
But also you spoke at length there about the growth mindset and the power of your mind, and your mind telling you what you can and can't do.
Yes.
Now, when you're there and you've done it seems like that's the easy part, is to relate that to people, that that's what you've done and how how you've approached this. But getting to that point, Francis, it's just like, where do you even start changing your thoughts and trying to engage with your thoughts in a more positive manner?
Yeah, well, I suppose Joe Dispenza's book was really important to me at the very start. The power of your mind. And that whole idea, if you think negative thoughts, that your body starts to prepare it, because it can't differentiate what is happening in reality and what your mind is saying to you. So if you thought the negative thoughts, then your body was actually going to start preparing for that. So that gave me a great sense of agency, that, well, I have control of my thoughts. I can sort of manifest what I want in terms of my health, my well-being. And so that gave me a sense of agency, I suppose.
Yeah, and that visualization as well. Yeah. Like we were talking about the W word, the weird word earlier on. That's we're heading into the woo-woo territory with that. Yeah. But a lot of people buy into that and say that without it they wouldn't be who they are or where they are in life.
It's a sense of belief, isn't it? Yeah, you believe.
How deep did you have to dig to find that sense of belief?
I knew my why. So for my family, it was really important. Like, I remember looking at the kids at the very start and a great sense of fear and guilt, on what maybe impact I was going to have on them. So I found my why really quick. And when I had my why, then I didn't have to think that deep at all.
Do you know, that's something I think that everybody, whenever you present it like that, it just seems very common sense, very matter of fact. Your why, what is your why? Yeah. But then if you revert that back to yourself and ask inwardly, what is my why? How many people in this room know what their why is? How many people would ask themselves that question if they weren't put in a position where they had to ask it?
That's it, yeah.
Do you know? But it could unlock so much power.
Yeah, completely.
Oh my goodness, that's one thing I'll take away from today, is that make sure you understand your why and what you're getting up out of bed in the morning for every single day. There's just something else I wanted to ask there, just at the very end, when you're talking about, we live in a very precarious world with information coming at us day and daily on the phone from other people. Well, I wouldn't do that, I would be doing this, I'd be doing that, and it's very difficult to try and navigate the path where you're getting good, solid information and doing the research. Following the research and following the science, that can't be overestimated in a case like yours when you get receive a diagnosis.
Yeah, I think, and then probably what I tried to do was to shield myself from all the negativity. That was really important, because there's all different forums and all different people say different things. So at the very start, that can be quite triggering. So I made sure that I wasn't part of any forum that was sharing sort of negative outlooks, if you like. I sort of created a shield. And like George Janek's work is really sort of research based. There's another principle called the Walls Principle. She's a doctor again in America who has a really good success story as well, but hers very much focused on selling her products and buying online programs, etc. And that didn't resonate with me, whereas George seemed more authentic, if you like. So, but for me, the research was important. And the real life case studies of people who's followed that path and was able to show the benefit of it.
And this is where your background in education comes in as well, where you have that appetite for the research,
Yes,
appetite
yeah.
for the correct
Yes,
information
yeah.
comes in as well.
Yeah.
And you mentioned there that you're an entrepreneur, so working for yourself.
Yes.
None of this is easy. So you had nothing to. Do you think that maybe was a motivator for you as well? Because you didn't have the pensionable job to
Yes,
fall
yeah,
back on
yeah.
there if things possibly did go awry for you.
Yep. I again going back to that sense of agency, where I suppose my approach gave me and work. If you have your own drive, your own motivation, your own responsibility, that you have to turn up each day. It gives you that sense of purpose.
Mm-hmm.
So. Yeah, I enjoy that. We get to be responsible for our own destiny, if you like, and it gives you that sense of agency. So that's important.
And what do you wish somebody had told you about the world of self-employment before you learned the lessons for yourself?
I think it gives you freedom. I do think it gives you freedom. So it is hard. I had a chat with Loretta. She's down the back, and we know me and Loretta's in the same class, and we just discussed this about moving, into your own self-employed and. It is difficult, but it does give you freedom, and it does give you that sense of taking responsibility for your own destiny, if you like, and you create your community around you, and you get to manifest your vision, if you like, and you're responsible for it, but you also get to reap the rewards for it, which is important. Yeah.
Well, I, for one, am very grateful that you had that conversation in the car coming up the road
you.
that
Yeah,
day, because you've just been exceptional to talk to today, and your presentation was something else as well. And may that just, the bounce and the zest, may that never ever leave you, Francis. Thank you so much. Thank you.